So the other night, Connor said, can we have Chipotle for dinner? And I said, well, that's a funny question because we don't even have Chipotle here where we live. The nearest Chipotle is like 40 minutes away. And so I said, you know what? We have Chipotle at home. I can make that. So that's what we're doing tonight. I'm gonna make copycat Chipotle chicken and cilantro lime rice, pinto beans, probably some guac, maybe some queso, corn salsa, and we're just gonna make our own Chipotle bowls slash burritos or tacos or whatever anyone wants right here at home. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and marinate the chicken. So in this bowl right here, I've just got some spices. I've got chili powder, oregano, smoked paprika, salt, cumin, garlic powder, pepper, and black pepper, and a bit of cayenne pepper. I'm gonna add in 2 tablespoons of oil and a tablespoon of white vinegar and just whisk this up. I added about 1.5 pounds of chicken breast to here. These are like the thinner sliced chicken breast, and just kind of mix this around to make sure all of the marinade is coating. So I'm gonna let that sit while I go ahead and prep the other ingredients. So in my rice cooker here for the rice, I've got some white rice, water. I just follow the proportions that are in the directions in my rice cooker, and I'll link this rice cooker down below. It's the Instant Pot brand one. I love it. 1 teaspoon of oil, and then a teaspoon of chicken bouillon powder, or you could use salt. I'm kind of loosely following the Skinny Taste recipe, so again, I'll link all of these recipes down below. So for the corn salsa, I'm gonna use frozen corn. I'm gonna cut the recipe in half, so just use 1 package of frozen corn, but I'm just gonna steam this in the microwave for like, I don't know, maybe 4 minutes, and then let it cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started on the guacamole, and I have to tell you, these avocados were definitely a gamble that actually paid off. Look how ripe they were. We had actually gone to Hy-Vee just like an hour before this to pick up the rest of the groceries I needed to make this. And so you guys know, if you're trying to buy avocados at the grocery store at the last minute, it means you can really have not a good chance of getting any that are ripe, but I got lucky this time. So I went ahead and scooped out the avocado flesh into my bowl, and then I added the juice of a lime. I really find that it's easiest to use a potato masher to mash up the avocado flesh, so that's what I use. One thing I really also like to add to my guacamole, which you don't have to if you don't want to, is a chopped jalapeno. I try to dice it really fine, and I discard most of the seeds and the membranes. And then I also add a little bit of red onion. I also try to mince that up really fine. Some of you guys have asked me about these white ceramic knives that I picked up from Walmart. I'll link them down below. It's the Beautiful brand. They're actually really, really great. And you guys know I'm super picky about knives. So got that into the bowl. And then for the tomato, I chose a tomato that I had on the counter that was a little bit more firm, so I could easily dice it up into cubes. I also just use kind of the outer flesh of the tomato that I de-seed so that the guacamole doesn't get super runny. So at this point, I go ahead and stir it up. There's a few more things that I want to add. I really like to add a fresh minced garlic to my guacamole. I think that it gives it a really good flavor. I didn't have any, so I just used this jar of minced garlic that I had in the fridge. And then I also like to add lots of chopped cilantro. I probably add more than any recipe calls for. However, I really like cilantro, and I don't typically use a recipe for my guacamole. I just kind of make it the way I always do. So I put that into a bowl, and I pressed some plastic wrap over the top to keep it from going brown. And next I'm going to start working on the corn salsa. So this particular recipe called for a roasted and diced poblano. I'm just kind of charring the skin over my gas burner. If you don't have a gas burner, you can do this in the oven under the broiler. I've done that also, and it works really great. After you get that skin charred, just put it in a bowl and cover it with plastic wrap and let it sit so you can later scrape the skin off. I'm also chopping up some more red onion and some more jalapeno into a fine dice. I told you guys earlier that I was cutting this corn salsa recipe in half, and I'm just now realizing that I cut the corn in the recipe in half, but I didn't cut all of the other ingredients in half, which is why I thought that it was a little bit bitter. I probably should have just used half the juice of a lemon and half the juice of a lime, but I did end up adding a few squeezes of honey in at the end just because it tasted a little bit too sour for me, and it turned out fine. But you know, word to the wise, follow the instructions. So I'm adding some minced cilantro to this also. I added some cumin and then just salt and pepper to taste. This will actually probably taste a lot better if you can let it sit in the fridge for a little while before you serve it. I didn't have time tonight, but obviously we're gonna have leftovers, so that will be good. I scraped all of the charred skin off the poblano, and then I'm just kind of shaving off the flesh with my knife. You can go ahead and discard the seeds and the stem. I'm drying this off because it was a little bit wet on the inside and I didn't want that liquid in my corn salsa. And then just using my knife to kind of dice the poblano into little pieces. So I'll get that in with the corn salsa, and that's pretty much it. Now, this does make quite a big batch. You'll see when I have leftovers at the end. So it is something that you can prep ahead of time. I would say all of the ingredients in this are pretty refrigerator stable, so this would stay good in the fridge for about a week. So just finishing the seasonings on that, and then I'm going to get started on the queso. So this is a new recipe that I'm trying. The last time I tried to make a copycat Chipotle queso recipe, it didn't turn out quite right, and this one is definitely a winner, so definitely recommend this particular recipe. I finally diced some onion and some jalapeno and sauteed that in a skillet in a little bit of oil, and then I'm adding 4 ounces of cream cheese that I diced up once the onion and jalapeno had a little bit of chance to soften. And then I'm just going to whisk that around until all of the cream cheese is melted. At this point, it's going to look kind of like chunky, but don't worry, it will all come together once you add all of the ingredients. I'm adding 1 can of Rotel. I chose to use the mild Rotel just because my kids were going to be eating this, but you could use the hot if you wanted to, and then just whisking that in with the cream cheese until everything starts to become combined. I'm adding some cumin, some chili powder. I really would wait until the end to salt this, just because you're putting cheese in here, and cheese in of itself is kind of salty. I'm adding 1 can of evaporated milk, and then just bringing that to a simmer and whisking it and letting everything combine. At this point, I shredded up my Monterey Jack cheese, so I'm going to go ahead and add that and whisk that in. And then really the last step is just to add the juice of 1 lime and then some chopped cilantro. So at this point, once you get everything added, you can go ahead and taste it. I did not add any salt to mine, but I did add a little bit of ground black pepper. For my beans, I just took the easy route and I used a can of seasoned black beans that I had in the pantry. So I just heated those up. And then once the chicken had a chance to marinate, I am just sauteing that in my skillet. I do like to cover it with foil while it's cooking so it has a chance to cook through, get some nice char on the outside of that. And then once the chicken was done, I removed it to a plate and just let it rest for about 10 minutes before I chopped it up. I am chopping this into, rather than using like strips of chicken, I'm chopping it into squares, kind of in smaller pieces, which is what Chipotle does. And once the chicken was chopped up, I'm taking those juices that came out when it was resting, drizzling those back on top of the chicken, and then I'll go ahead and put it back on to the plate. And this dinner is about done. So once I had the chicken, I went ahead and kind of put everything in an assembly line so everyone could come and make their bowls the way they wanted to. We have our rice. I added some lime and cilantro to that once it was done cooking. Our corn salsa, I did get a little bit of shredded cheese out, and then I grabbed some salsa and sour cream from the refrigerator. We have our cooked chicken, the black beans. Again, I just heated those up super simply on the stove. And then our queso, which we had a ton left over. I did not get any tortillas out for this particular meal, but obviously you could do that if someone in your family wants a burrito or a quesadilla or tacos. So I just built my bowl with some rice, beans, chicken, some queso, sour cream, and salsa. And then I realized after I was taking this shot that I forgot to add my guacamole, so I added some of that as well. Again, I really love making dinners like this because look at how many leftovers I have. I've got beans left over, plenty of guacamole, corn salsa, chicken. I've got a ton of queso left over and some rice. And so this will definitely come in handy throughout the next couple days as we are all home from work and school. Super easy to reheat these components and either make burrito bowls or tacos.